I know I've already said this 1,000 times, but I am so sick of this. Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, two career politicians that are so stubborn they refuse to make any compromise. We need to put aside politics, left versus right. None of that really matters. It is time to vote out many of these career politicians that have been the epitome of the swamp. Most of them have been in DC for 30, 40, 50 plus years, and they have never fixed anything. They've only made things worse. Thankfully, some in DC realize that bipartisanship is the key, and they are striving to work across the aisle to build a new stimulus package, something that we all desperately need. Even Pelosi is starting to feel the pressure, and she is rumored to be pushing out a new $2.4 trillion stimulus bill to the floor to get voted on this week. What are the chances that this will get passed? Will we all finally get our $10,000 EIDL grants that we were promised in the CARES Act? What about more stimulus checks for people, a second round of PPP funding, and improved unemployment benefits? All this and more in today's video. Hello and welcome to Stephen Carlson Show. I'm Stephen Carlson. I'm a tech entrepreneur, real estate investor, author, YouTuber, and volunteer paramedic. Now, as the election approaches, both political parties, they need a win. Unfortunately, as I've said before, in the swamp, this usually means it's better to sabotage your competitor's plan and completely stonewall any progress just so you can blame the other guy, rather than make any inroads on actually helping the people. And if you are just as frustrated as I am with both political parties, check out my book, America Hijacked, where I show both parties have lied, cheated, and stole from the American people for decades. The link is down in the description. Purchasing that book helps to support me and this channel. Thanks, and I appreciate it. Every day I read your comments that you guys leave in my videos, and usually it includes very sad stories of small, family-run businesses on the total verge of collapse because DC has been screwing around for months. So what is it that we can expect? I have read countless news articles, watched multiple interviews, and read various proposals from different members of Congress, and this is where I believe that we are heading in the next package. Jason is reporting on a late-breaking CNBC article that he found.
It's now $2.4 trillion is going to come to the floor of the House next Wednesday or Thursday for a vote, according to CNBC, and it's too early to get the article links in the pinned comments. There are $600 benefits increase, not the $450 to $600 on the last bill. There's $1,200 stimulus checks, an extra $500 for every child or dependent that you have. There's over $500 billion to the states. There is PPP. Over $200 billion, and of course, they never give mention in prime time to EIDL, but the last two bills, both in the Senate and the House, had between $80 billion for the grant in the Senate, $50 billion from the Problem Solvers Caucus in the House. So I have to assume that there's going to be money in there for the EIDL program. We cannot sit still. You have to do this, ladies and gentlemen. You got to give us a thumbs up. You got to share this everywhere and use the description as we have been now for months. I need my $10,000 EIDL grant, hashtag EIDL.
We need to get the word out and demand that Congress finally pass a bill that is going to help us, not just the special interest groups. Share this video on all of your social media platforms. Email it to your local news stations. Email your local politicians. And make sure that you include hashtag Team EIDL. That's Team EIDL, all in one word. As Jason reported, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi indicated on Thursday that Democrats will draft a new stimulus relief bill and will look to bring it to vote before October 2nd. That's when the House is scheduled to recess. Pelosi has designated Richard Neal, who currently heads up the Ways and Means Committee, to lead this new effort. Neal has estimated the new package will be in the $2.2 trillion range, according to The Hill. Now, this is slightly lower than the CNBC article that Jason commented on, but it is way less than the $3.4 trillion HEROES Act, which the House passed back in May. We are still striving for an agreement, Pelosi told her leadership team, and according to Politico. The new bill proposal comes as Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Pelosi have agreed to restart their talks about a second stimulus bill. I've probably spoken to Speaker Pelosi 15 or 20 times in the last few days on continuing resolution, Mnuchin told the Senate Banking Committee. And we have agreed to continue our discussions about CARES Act. Now, before I get to that, why don't you check out Webull? The link is in the description below. When you deposit $100, they will give you one stock valued up to $1,600. Now, we all know that the negotiations have basically stalled for months. Initially, Democrats pushed for their ludicrous HEROES Act, which gave billions of dollars to special interest groups and only a few small crumbs to the people. Then the Republicans, they pulled the same BS and after a long delay released their proposal called the HEALS Act, which didn't even make it to the Senate floor for a vote, as various factions balked at the bill, including fiscal conservatives worried about adding to the national debt. Then, more recently, Senate Republicans unveiled a so-called skinny bill that was to help coalesce Republicans, but this brought their $1 trillion proposal down to $300 or $500 billion. Democrats completely dismissed the skinny bill, and it failed to advance in the Senate. Once again, this is total BS from both parties. There are zero reasons that we need one single massive bill that just covers everything. That only makes it harder to get approvals. If these items were broken out into smaller bills, we could have seen some actual progress on the core concepts that both parties basically agree to. For example, both sides agree, at least in principle, to have increased business stimulus for companies, that employ less than 100 employees, a second round of stimulus checks to all taxpayers, and increased unemployment benefits as long as there's some sort of a roadmap to get people back to work. In principle, both sides like these ideas. Of course, there are some varying opinions on the exact dollar amounts, but if they would have focused on tackling one problem at a time, rather than a massive one-size-fits-all bill, we could have actually seen some progress months ago. If they had done that, then by now all small businesses would have already received their $10,000 EIDL grants. They would have also received up to $2 million in loans, and all small businesses would have also received a second round of PPP. And more importantly, everyone would be receiving paychecks from their employer, thus allowing consumers to go back out and purchase goods and services from local businesses. Instead, Democrats kept pushing for an even larger and more extensive package, knowing full well the Republicans would completely refuse to support it. And this is not a negotiating strategy to get a better deal. No, it was a strategy to assist the Democrats in the upcoming election. And don't fool yourself, people. Both political parties only care about themselves getting reelected. If instead Congress actually cared about us, they would have passed a half a dozen smaller packages over the past 6 months. Then, now they could be focusing on the more complex issues that they don't have consensus across the aisle. Personally, I have mixed feelings about giving states large bailouts. On one side, I agree with the Democrats that there are states that had additional expenses for public safety that was disproportionately higher than previous years due to this pandemic. Those expenses should be assisted by the federal government, as we, as Americans, we're all in this together and we should help out the entire country. That being said, many states have been on the complete verge of bankruptcy for years, spending more money each year than they make, with liabilities that far outweigh their income. Those states with poor fiscal policies and management should not have their expenses bailed out by the rest of the country. Think of it this way. If you pay all of your bills and you live within your means every single year, but your next door neighbor, he buys a new boat every few years and takes his family out on expensive vacations. If something happens to his income source, is it fair to you to be stuck paying every one of his bills? Especially if, in this example, both of you make the same $75,000 per year, but you chose to be more responsible with your spending? This is the same case for these states that have been spending billions of more dollars each year than what they have, usually in the form of entitlements and spending for special interest groups, all to get more votes. Now, I want to make this clear. This argument completely transcends political parties. There are some great examples of Democrat-run states and Republican-run states that are in massive debt. There are also plenty of examples of the exact opposite, with states that are being run very well by both parties. Now, what do you guys think? Where should the money be allocated in these stimulus packages? Would you support a bill that, in addition to stimulus for the people and small businesses, of course, also had funding for states? Would you limit those funds to pandemic-related expenses? Or would you give a pass to these states on a one-time fix for all of their financial problems? Why don't you comment down below or jump over to the Discord channel to share your thoughts. Thank you very much for watching. Please make sure you click like and subscribe. Doing so really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks, and I'll see you on the next one.